Hello everybody, my name is Manues and welcome to another Eternal News video series. A bunch of spoilers have been piled up since the last video, so it's about time to review them. So first of all, we got 3 new revenge spoilers, so 3 more Argent port cards. Let's go over them real quick. So first we have a very innocuous 1-power 1/1 called Toctic, but there are 2 interesting things about it. First of all, it has revenge. And given, depending on what they gonna do with revenge, like if there's some nice ways of taking further advantage of revenge, that might become interesting. And the most important thing is the creature type, the unit type. Because the unit type is Clockroach, which means if you play an actual, time Clockroach from the Empty Throne, the Toctics in your deck and hand will also get +1/+1, and that will probably not be the only and the last Clockroach. So Clockroach seems to be a supported tribe, most likely, so that is gonna become pretty interesting. Maybe at some point there will be like a Clockroach tribal deck, plus there's like some interest in Shadow anyway for like the Clockroaches because of the Echo and because of Dark Return Echo interactions, and here it's kind of the same with like Dark Return and Revenge interaction, so both of these Clockroaches synergize with Dark Return, making that more appealing, and maybe with a couple other nice Clockroaches, it can be like a strong tribal Clockroach core in the center of like some aggressive or at least like mid-rangey aggressive deck or something. So something to keep an eye on. I mean, this card itself is not particularly impressive or strong, but the fact that we're getting more Clockroaches and potentially also more Clockroaches that have some synergy with each other is pretty cool and interesting, and I'm looking forward to that. Next we have Stone Powder Alchemist. I think this card is honestly quite bad. It's basically the old Amethyst Acolyte that costs 1 green and 1 power more, and has for that 1 power in cost and the fact that it's multicolor, we get +1 health and revenge basically, and lifesteal. Like the old Amethyst Acolyte just drained the opponent for 2 and was a 2/1 for 3. This is a 2/2 for 4, and the lifesteal makes it so that the summon basically drains the opponent for 2 as well, because the lifesteal applies to the summon effect. So this basically reads, when it comes into play, deal 2 damage to the enemy player, gain 2 health. And it also has revenge to come back with the vengeance. But yeah, I think the card is just like probably okay or decent in limited, but in constructed it's like not playable. 4 power for 2/2 with like this marginal effect that's not even like card advantage, like worth a card, and the slow and unreliable nature of revenge, making it go in the top 10 cards of your deck, where you may or may not draw it before the game ends. Just not particularly impressive. This card is extremely underwhelming. But Victor's Cry is a bit cooler. Like, we get the 4 power double green fast spell, that's nice, and it basically is like the first sort of interesting big pump spell. Okay, it's +5/+5 this turn, and it has revenge, and it's interesting and nice to see that revenge goes on more than just units. I assume in this case, since we haven't seen any spells with Destiny yet, I would assume basically if you draw this with Destiny, you have to play it right away. So the second half of this will not be a fast spell and will not be as nice as the first copy, while the first copy you can like use in combat and on whatever you need to and whenever you need to, while the second copy is more like half as good but free. So since granted 4 power for a fast spell +5/+5 is a pretty reasonable deal, and the revenge is sort of like just a free bonus. Revenge here basically works a lot like a delayed rebound in Magic. In Magic this effect, like when you play the card and it successfully resolves, you can copy it during the next upkeep and use it once more. so you lose all like the benefits of timing and instant speed and stuff like that. And this is sort of the same. You basically get a solid combat trick the first time around, and you know at some point you might get like a free +5/+5 on a unit that the opponent then either can choose to jump block, or if the guy has overwhelming, you get some free damage, but you don't get the typical value from a pump spell where you can save something in combat and trade 1-for-1, or even better if they gang block. But I guess that's also why we get a pretty reasonable upfront deal, so sort of to balance it out. The revenge here is more of like a slight added incremental value later, because we all know combat tricks that you have to play like pre-combat and the opponent knows they are there and can plan with them more and just basically put like their worst unit in front of the guy that has been targeted by the Destiny Victor's Cry is a lot worse, but since it's sort of free, not gonna complain. And it's interesting, we'll see if there's like some deck that wants this type of like big pump spell. And I mean, there's potential, for example, that there's some Combre deck that is interested in this, because there's a bunch of good overwhelmers. There's Seraph and Copper Hall Elite, to name two, and some flyers. So maybe there's gonna be like some Stompy style beatdown Combre deck with Copper Hall Elite and stuff, and making use of this trick to solve some of the issues Copper Hall Elite otherwise has. Alright, that's it for the revenge spoilers. Let's move on to the 5 new legendary cards for the upcoming legendary event. So there's gonna be an event, basically just like the first Omens of the Past event, where we get 5 new to play with 5 new legendaries, one from each alliance basically. And once again we can only use decks from the 5 new alliances, and I think you will get 4 copies of the legendary of the faction alliance that you are playing with shuffled into your deck. So you can basically build the deck around the legendary, and then you have like a 79 card deck with the 4 legendaries in it. That is what I assume it's gonna work like. There are not that many details yet on like if you can switch between each game like last time, or if you're locked into one archetype for one run like in the non-Omens of the Past events we had so far, and how long the runs will be in terms of wins and losses and the pricing and stuff, and the entry fee. But I expect probably between 2,000 and 4,000 gold, probably 40,000, because I think they want to like keep these pre-release events a bit more special and a bit more pricey. And as we saw before, we will usually at least get our money's worth for like the OX run. Without any wins we will usually at least break even, which makes these events very playable, because you don't really, even if you're like not doing well, you're not gonna effectively lose value. You might lose your gold, but you just turn it in an equivalent of packs without losing value on your account, on your stuff. Alright, so let's dive into the first one. This Mask of Torment, kind of not what I would have expected from Xenon, to be honest, because this card is very slow reactive control type of card, but we'll see how the rest of Xenon looks and how this like fits in, because right now I think it doesn't fit in that well with what Xenon has and what Xenon is best at doing, given that we mostly have Xenon killers. That's the best thing we could do with Xenon. So this works a bit like the promo that we got. It adds to, like in the past, it adds to your maximum power, but it costs 5, so it really doesn't ramp into anything particularly relevant. But what it does, it ramps into itself, so it's kind of like a slow win condition that gives you a lot of power to work with. Honestly, I'm not that big of a fan of the card, because you take off your 5th turn for basically not getting any impact, then you get like some marginal impact that doesn't really do a whole lot for you, and super down the line you have like this late game win condition. I honestly don't think it's gonna be that good. So basically every time you gain health, you gain +1 maximum power on it. At least it's reliable, unlike the 05 that we had in the past that basically is super vulnerable to silence, every removal and everything. And it has an ultimate. You can spend 25 power to summon the Tormentor. With the Tormentor we already know, it's an 8/8, I think flying overwhelm with charge, that we also have from Whispers of the Void, so this eventually ends up helping you kill the opponent. But it's not even that great. Like the Tormentor is multi-faction, so it dies to Annihilate, making sure that it might not even deal 8 damage. Then it dies to Vanquish, since it also doesn't have any Aegis, and it's just like a big, dumb, evasive fatty, like nothing particularly impressive. Once the opponent kills it, all it has done is the damage that it has done so far. It doesn't generate any value. So yeah, I think this card is like probably the worst or one of the worst of the new promos. Not very impressed. We'll see if it maybe is better in context later than it looks right now, but right now this is just like, I don't want to spend my 5th turn or any turn really on doing this and then get my face bashed in. And 25 is a lot of power, and also even once you get there, you're not getting something that just is like, alright, I win the game. Or like, alright, I have this dumb fatty here. Do you have a removal? Alright, you have a removal. Nice, now I have all this power that doesn't do anything for me, and I wasted a card and tons of time on this. Not impressed. Alright, next we have Molot and Inova. That's the big Icaria style legendary for Skycrack, and this one is actually pretty decent. Like 8/8 flying Aegis for 8 is pretty nice. Aegis makes sure that once you invest a whole of 8 power, you at least have something reasonably reliable, just like Icaria. The fact that it's multi-faction also makes it kind of hard to kill right now. It basically only dies to like Vanquish and Death Strike, plus something else to pop the Aegis, which is pretty nice. And if you have a good way of making sure that you can spark it before you play it, it's actually really good, because it's basically like a one-sided sweeper. It deals 4 to the enemy's face and kills all their smaller stuff, so they will usually only be left with a couple, if they have multiples of 5+ health units, and they are facing down an 8/8, so it will mostly just stabilize the board, because the opponent will usually not have enough left to profitably attack into Molot and Inova. So yeah, this looks pretty good. 8 is a lot, but as long as there's gonna be a home for it, an 8/8 flying Aegis guy that has the potential to one-side sweep the board, sort of, is the type of power level that you want for an 8-drop unit. This looks like a potentially really cool finisher top-end card for slow mid-range deck or control deck. This card's really cool. I'm looking forward to this. This is one of the best of the new legendaries, if not the best possibly. I really like this card. Alright, next we have Moment of Creation. This generates 2 sentinels with attack and health equal to the number of spells in your void, which to be honest is a bit weird and surprising, given that it's in Praxis. I would have expected to see something like this from Skycrack, like sort of the spell faction. So I'm not sure what to think of this. I think right now Praxis definitely would be way too light on spells. Like, look at Praxis tokens. What do they have? They have like torches and assembly lines, and like 4 burn spells like Obliterate or Flame Blast. Like 12 spells. I mean, 8 is like decentish. It's kind of like a Shimmer Pack type thing, or like a worth Great Parliament. But that's the thing, it's like a way worse Great Parliament right now. Unless there's like gonna be a million good playable spells in Praxis, and there's suddenly this like super spell heavy Praxis deck. Because, I mean, with Great Parliament, at 8 power you get 2 4/4 flyers for 4. And it only costs 1 green and 1 time also, so it's like super easy to support in more than 2 faction decks. While this costs like double, it's basically like Shimmer Pack. It takes up your entire 8th turn, not half of it. And you get 2 non-evasive units. They don't have Overwhelm, they don't have Flying. And you need a lot of spells to get 2 4/4s. And then you get 2 4/4s for twice the price of Great Parliament without the Flying, which is miserable. So, especially for the event, I don't think this card is going to be particularly good, because I think there's just like not enough good spells to play in a Praxis shell to like get use of this. But I mean, it's at least a card that we cannot fully evaluate yet, and it might be that in the context of the new set, this card is actually gonna be kind of good and constructed and something that people want to be playing. But right now I think 2 Sentinels that are kind of hard to get big enough and to take up your entire 8th turn are just not impressive enough without any extra abilities and everything. Especially in context of what we already have with like Great Parliament being like a million times better than this. Also because once you are at 12 power you get 3 owls. Here you still only get 2 Sentinels for 2/3 of your 12 power turn, which is just not good. I think this card is just like way underpowered unless there suddenly is a way to make sure that these things are gonna be ginormous by the time you play. I think you have to be capable of making them like 5/5 or 6/6 the least, fairly reliable by the time you play this to make it impressive. And yeah, right now I don't see that, and even then it's not gonna be wow, it's gonna be more like, yeah, it's potentially a good card. Alright. Next we have 8 of Horu. So looks like we finally got a cruel ultimatum type card. I mean, the effect of this card is really cool and really powerful. So let's look at this. We get to stun each enemy unit, so it's basically like sort of a crystallize without the damage effect. So it virtually time walks the opponent. Gives us 1 turn to breathe and stabilize. Then we get 2 owls, sort of like 2/3 of a 12 power Great Parliament. We get to draw 2 cards, get back some resources, and we also get 4 armor, which is better than 4 health, because if we have a Staff of Stories or a Rune Hammer out or something, this has more value than just 4 health. The big problem I see is that it costs 12. I think 12 is just too much. I mean, the effect is kind of cool and powerful, but given that but in relation to the cost, this effect is not that powerful for 12. Like, a 12 power card really basically has to just sort of win you the game on the spot. And this is strong, but it's not gonna win you the game for sure. And 12 is so much, like it's so hard to hit 12 power by turn 12 reasonably. And making sure that your deck still is like sort of balanced between power and stuff. And it's also like not splashable into Combre because it's like double primal, so you can not splash that. I guess maybe they made it 12 because they sort of like Martial Ironthorn, and I don't know, maybe there will be like a big mid-range, big Horu sort of ramp type thing with Ironthorn that makes this 12 less bad than it looks. But right now, like a 12 power card in Construct is just not something that I'm looking forward to. And I think this card is just not that much better than Channel the Tempest. I mean, Channel gets you 3 cards and to kill 1 enemy unit, so basically 4 cards for 1 card for 8 power with board impact. Here we get basically 4 cards and some time. So this is in value sort of the same, like only subtly better than a Channel the Tempest. And there's only so many like expensive cards you can put in the deck. You cannot really put 8 of the Horu in a deck with like 4 Channel the Tempest, so you have to like cut Channel the Tempest for that. And I'm not sure if I'm convinced to do that, because yeah, the value is just not that much better for the fact that it costs 4 power more. I'm highly skeptical of this card. I like the idea of this card, but I don't like the execution right now, because 12 power, I think this would need to be more for 12 power. And even then, 12 power is still 12 power. And 12 power is something that you usually don't do in Constructed. And in Limited even less. So yeah, this card is awkward to me. And last but not least, we have Grinva, Judge of Battles. This is basically the Argenport Icaria, so to speak. Get a 7/9 for 7. And no battle skills whatsoever, which is weird, so kind of like a vanilla 7/9. And the one thing it does basically is when any of your units is killed, Rinva deals damage to the enemy player equal to the unit attack. So basically if the opponent like blocks your units in combat, they're still gonna deal damage to the opponent once. I think is kind of like not that impressive, since it doesn't even like trigger infiltrate or whatever, and it's just, yeah, kind of a marginal effect, and the fact that it's just like a vanilla 7/9, no Aegis, no battle skills, makes it just very unexciting. I think this card is just I don't like, there's nothing like, this card doesn't make me want to build a deck around it or makes me want to put it in a constructed deck. In limited it's like decent because it's big and not that easy to handle and can make the board really problematic for the opponent, but this just doesn't strike me as a particularly impressive constructed card, honestly. I mean, it's not terrible because it has a decent like stat to cost ratio, some added benefits, but it's super underwhelming and just not worth the effort of getting all the way up to 7. You don't get enough for it, in my opinion. So yeah, I don't expect this to be a big deal. So right now, my hopes for the event mostly lie on Molot and Inova, because that card is really impressive and powerful. The problem once again is it's in the weakest, poorliest supported alliance of the 5 so far, and will probably only become really good and live up to its potential once we have the entire set. In the event, I think it's gonna be a bit problematic to build a deck where this really shines, because there's so little framework for it. But yeah, this is definitely has all the hallmarks of a potential constructed staple to me. So expect some Molot and Inova in your Omens of the Past future, because this card is here to shake up constructed probably. Alright, that's it again for this part of the Eternal News spoiler review. Looking forward to the event, kind of like what I expected, that they're gonna give us 5 of like the big Icaria style legendaries, not like smaller, less flashy legendaries that are better for constructed. They're gonna give us like the big, flashy, alliance defining things to show them off, and that's what they did. Alright, we'll see how the event is gonna shape up in terms of profitability, like payout, entry fee, and the structure of it. I think we'll hear about that soon. Alright, that's it again. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next time. I'm out. Bye.